If you're a rock star, your job is to create and perform rock and roll music. If you're a comedian, your job is to create and perform stand-up comedy. Ostensibly, the more you focus on that, the better the product.
And rock stars and stand-up comedians are not the CEOs of their own businesses or brands, and they're definitely not the accountants of their own businesses or brands. They're in product development. That's it. And according to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, rounding to the nearest percent, 0% of frauds are caught by people in product development.
If you'd like to earn CPE credit for listening to this episode, visit earmarkcpe.com. Download the app, take a short quiz, and get your CPE certificate. Continuing education has never been so easy. And now, on to the episode.
This is Oh My Fraud, a true crime podcast where instead of taking your kid and demanding money, our criminals just take the money. I'm Caleb Newquist.
And I'm Greg Kyte.
Oh, Greg, it's great to be back with you again.
It is.
Talking the fraud.
Yep.
I'm really just kind of stalling until I have to ask you to read a review. So do you just want to read the review?
It's always wonderful seeing you too. But absolutely. I love reading reviews because they're getting better. This one made me so happy. It's a 5-star. Yeah. It's a 5-star review that was left for us on Apple Podcasts. It says, quote, "I wrote this review just to see if it would get read at the top of an episode, and sure enough, it did. But seriously, I need 120 CPE credit hours to reactivate my license, and working through the backlog of Oh My Fraud episodes is making that process entertaining and educational in that order. And after reading that, I've got to ask you, did we just get Back to the Future? They wrote the review in the past, but somehow they knew that we would read it in the future. Is this person the accounting Biff Tannen? What the fuck just happened?"
I just think they knew how to set us up. We got to give credit where credit's due. They just like, I know how to get read on this show. I'll just set them up.
Yeah, likely that's the case.
Yeah,
they used our hubris in an attempt to prove that the law of attraction was real. So either we got Back to the Future or we got Oprah Winfrey, one of the two, into reading that review.
Yeah, either way, I'm fine. So regardless, we love getting reviews, and whether you're trying to reinstate your license, which is no picnic, or you just want, if you just want to hear a good fraud story, leave us a review on Apple, rate us on Spotify, or Earmark, wherever you listen. Do that for us.
We would love it. We also want to let everybody know that we are more than just disembodied voices inside your podcast app. We take this show on the road. If your firm has an in-house training or your event needs a keynote presentation that is ridiculously fun and ridiculously informative, let us know, because we got that. And don't worry, we're pros. We'll keep the language squeaky clean when we're in your house. I mean, we will do that unless you specifically say you want the swears, then we will gladly oblige.
Yeah. If you're interested in hiring us for your event, send us an email at ohmyfraud@earmarkcpe.com to get pricing and availability. So, Greg, Kyte, changing subjects. I'd like to believe that most people can remember a point in their youth when a particular bit of music kind of clicked with them, maybe an artist, maybe a song. I was asking my wife about this, and for her, it was Katie Lang, Constant Craving.
Oh,
and
that's a cool answer. What is your wife trying to just make sure that everybody knows that she would be the coolest of the three of us?
I mean, she loves Katie Lang, and we actually, sidebar, we bought Katie Lang tickets because she was doing a tour early in 2020, and of course we did not get to see Katie Lang in early 2020. Yeah. So it's not only music. You and I have talked about this before, but not only is it music that I'm thinking of, but like also comedy. And so whether it's a funny show, like a funny sitcom, or you remember stand-up comedy, a stand-up comedian that you first clicked with. I don't know. There's something magical about those occurrences in your youth. So I'm just curious about that for you, Greg Kyte.
Well, let me start by tackling the stand-up comedy side of stuff, because I
Sure.
have a very clear memory of that. I was probably in 5th or 6th grade. I've been swimming competitively since I was 8 years old. So we were on some trip somewhere to some bigger swim meet, and we had to travel there. I traveled with my best friend in swimming, and we just decided, I guess his parents decided, we would camp wherever we were, I'm sure to save a buck on a hotel room. So we were camping, and he brought a little portable cassette tape player. This was in the 80s, and he also brought Eddie Murphy's debut album titled Eddie Murphy.
Sure.
And we listened to it in the tent on the cassette player, and I'm pretty sure he was not supposed to have this cassette. And
how old were you?
Like this, like 11, probably 11. Yeah. And
depends on the parents, right? Some parents are like, it's fine, and some parents are like, absolutely not.
Right. And I got the impression that it was a hot cassette, and that it was like, hey, we just got to keep this cool, just keep the volume down. And here's the thing, the thing I remember from that cassette was Eddie Murphy's song called "Boogie in Your Butt" is what it was called,
right?
And that I was dying about "Boogie in Your Butt." And so I remember that. I don't really remember the song. So before we recorded, knowing that we were going to talk about this, actually listened to it on YouTube, and I was like, that's not good. That's not good. It's not particularly funny, and it's not particularly good. But at 11, it was comedy gold.
Of course,
what it was. And I was dead.
Well, in this episode, we are discussing one musician and one comedian who we we're both in kind of our orbits of interests, and I'm sorry to say, but they had some bad luck with some fraud, and we're going to get into those. We're going to get into those stories. The celebrity, Courtney Love, singer-songwriter, actress, bad tweeter. Greg, you were there for grunge. You're the right age, right geography. Were you not?
Yeah. I was absolutely. I grew up in Seattle, so in the late 80s and early 90s, I was right there.
That was the time.
It was. It was.
Yeah.
It's weird knowing that my brother. So I was a preppy church kid. My brother was the rocker of the family.
Okay.
And it's weird and also awesome knowing that he participated in the grunge movement. He's not a musician, but he's definitely a big fan. So I know he went to some like very in the spirit of grunge concerts of a lot of the grunge bands as grunge was becoming a global phenomenon.
Probably saw some good early shows.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So since you were the preppy church kid, then were you aware of, did you have any kind of frame of reference when it came to Courtney Love?
No, I did not. I did not. I gotta say, as a preppy church
you
kid,
probably could have used, as a preppy church kid, you probably could have used a Courtney Love in your life. That would have been an interesting,
that's the only, like, even today, the only reference I have for Courtney Love is I know that she had a role in the Woody Harrelson movie about the biopic of Larry Flint, the founder of Hustler.
Yes.
And so which I also know is ironic that it's like I was a preppy church kid, so I didn't know anything about Courtney Love. Oh, except for the movie about pornography.
Yes, that's right.
That's
Yeah. No, so I was in the early 90s. I had not kind of transitioned from the country to the rock and the grunge alternative kind of weirdness that, because while my friends were getting me into Metallica and Guns N' Roses and stuff, like the Nirvana and the Pearl Jam and the Soundgarden, that was very anti that stuff, like the hair metal, that late 80s, early 90s stuff.
Yeah.
So I kind of started discovering that in the mid 90s. But around that time, like I started listening to Hole. That was Courtney Love's first band. And so I knew who she was and I liked her music. And if you're not familiar with Courtney Love, and I assume some people aren't, she first came to prominence as the lead singer of this band Hole, which is an alternative rock band. It formed in 1989. They released their first album in about 1991. And their breakout album was called Live Through This, and that was in 1994. And as a lot of people probably know, well, this is how a lot of people know who she is, but she's the widow of Kurt Cobain,
right?
Who's the lead singer and guitarist of Nirvana, who died by suicide in 1994. So, that kind of puts her in the musical context, but you're right, Greg, she's also an actress. She actually was nominated for an Academy Award in 1996 for her performance in The People vs. Larry Flint.
Oh, okay.
And
she was nominated. I mean, I knew it was a very critically acclaimed movie, which was probably the way that I talked Christian Greg into watching.
Watching
it.
Right.
So,
yeah. It's like, well, this is great art. So
it's nominated for an Academy Award.
The Lord has no judgment on art. So.
No, of course not.
Wow, that sounds like complete bullshit.
Oof. Well, don't get me started.
Oh, okay. Ooh, I'm fun. That's like a fun after show convo right there.
Right.
Anyway, in that movie, she played Althea Leisure. That was Larry Flint's fourth wife, which sounds kind of like
in real life, side. Not just for the movie. Althea Leisure. That sounds like, hey, we need a name for the wife of a guy who owns a porn empire. Oh, yes. Althea Pleasure.
Perfect. Anyway, throughout the 2000s and the 2010s, she continued to record music and she continued to act. She also, this is kind of in the research, this was kind of a surprise to me, but she also co-created and co-wrote 3 volumes of, I believe it's pronounced manga, which is like a Japanese comics, Japanese like graphic novels. Yep. Which are extremely popular.
Yeah.
So she did some of that. She has had a very interesting, creative, prolific career as an artist. And I don't know, it's really fascinating when you kind of like step back from it all and look at what she's been able to do as an artist. It's pretty impressive. Unfortunately for her, she has struggled with addiction for many, many years.
Right.
She first got it. Yeah.
Being true to the grunge ethos.
Yes, of course. Yes. And that's when it started for her. She first got addicted to heroin with Kurt Cobain in the early 90s. And she went into rehab in 2005 and got sober in 2007. And she even said in a 2019 interview that she had relapsed as recently as 2018.
Oh,
as best as I can tell, she is sober today, but this has been part of her life. And like, if you listen to interviews with her, you definitely, she has kind of this reputation as kind of a pugnacious, kind of like volatile person and a loose cannon, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
And she's probably earned that. And I kind of get the sense that she understands that. She has enough self-awareness that she would own that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
and again, like I said, I don't have Courtney Love isn't she doesn't hold a very large place in my understanding of pop culture at all, but her reputation, like you said, is broad enough that I go, oh yeah, all that seems to track, even for a guy who, with whom for a guy who doesn't know hardly anything about her.
Yeah, right. Not too much frame of reference,
but loose cannon. Yeah, that seems to track.
Yeah. What is also interesting though is despite all of this dynamic in her life as an artist and tragedy, losing a husband at a very young age, she has done quite well for herself. Kurt Cobain's his share of the revenue from those records and all the money that band made in the early 90s, that of course passed to her. along with the money that she made from all the stuff that she did. So she had like a pretty, I wasn't able to really pin down like the size of the fortune. We'll get into some numbers in a bit, but she had a sizable fortune as a result of that.
Yeah. You've got to think if your husband was one of 3 members of the biggest band of the 90s, arguably,
right.
then
Yes.
Yeah, you're probably doing okay.
Yeah. Right. And what's interesting about the Courtney Love story, it's like, again, so this is a fraud story, and her particular fraud story isn't so much a single event as it is kind of her whole career. And I don't mean that her art is a fraud. Her art is legitimate and kind of, and interesting and critically acclaimed and whatever. Like she has the art chops.
This isn't a Milli Vanilli type fraud story.
Correct. But like she has been exploited throughout her career. And in December of 2021, she published an essay in the Financial Times as a part. The FT was doing this financial literacy and inclusion campaign, and she wrote an essay for it.
Right.
And it was pretty interesting. It was a pretty interesting read. And so I'm quoting from that.
And it makes sense because most people who aren't financially literate subscribe to the Financial Times. So it seems like they're going to make a big difference.
Right. So I'm going to read from that essay and to give you a sense of like where she was coming from. She writes, "My family has been the victim of every single financial crime there is. I don't want anybody to feel sorry for us, but some really horrible things have happened. We've had millions taken from us. It started a few years before Kurt's death in the early 90s and only got worse after he died. Recently, my manager and an attorney discovered 5 forged wills of mine, 67 bank accounts, 102 MasterCards and Visas. There were Centurion cards with $1 million credit lines. I found one that was being used in 2005 by someone I had fired in 1999. Basically, they stole every cent." And again, if you ever listen to her in an interview, like, she can come off again like she's just a live wire.
Yeah.
And so some of that might feel like hyperbole, but I kind of don't think so. Like, she was on late last year. Actually, I think it was actually in 2022. She was on Mark Maron's podcast, his WTF podcast. And she talked in broad strokes about how she had been betrayed repeatedly during her career in that conversation, and including she gave up a portion of her share of Cobain's publishing rights. So it wasn't entirely clear whether actual fraud occurred. Like, no one's ever been arrested. There's been countless lawsuits though, and a lot of that stuff has been settled out of court. But in 2009, an attorney working for her claimed in a New York Post article that as much as like $530 million, quote, may have been looted by unscrupulous investors acting on the singer's behalf. So like, she had people looking into this because it was so out of hand.
Right.
So even if you kind of listen to her and kind of don't take her seriously because she kind of feels, volatile or not together, there were definitely people that were, she hired people to look into this for her. And, we'll get into more of it, but it was clearly that she had been exploited because of, the kind of the vulnerability because of her addiction issues and thinking about grief after her husband dying and things like that. And then this going on for like 20 plus years or whatever it is. That sounds kind of exhausting.
It does sound exhausting.
Anyway.
Also, and whatever you think of Courtney Love, you also got to go really, fleecing widows. Just historically doesn't have a good, juju that goes along with that whole line of work.
Later in that same New York Post article, this attorney said, "We have only been able to track down 30 million, but there is more." There were accusations of real estate flipping. A lot of the money ended up in real estate, and even accusations of money laundering through bank accounts that were opened in her name and in Kurt Cobain's name and in their daughter's name. And although no one was specifically named, the lawyer had accused, quote, former assistants, former managers, CPAs, lawyers, and a couple of banks.
Nice.
So it was coming at them from all angles.
It's nice to know that CPAs were involved in the in the fraud, because we're only known as people's trusted business advisor. So
Right.
Yeah, that helps uphold the brand.
Indeed. In 2011, so just kind of going back a little bit still, Courtney Love was sued by this attorney who was representing her because this attorney claimed that her now former client, Courtney Love, had made libelous statements about her. Courtney Love countersued over a letter that lawyer supposedly had wrote to her daughter, Frances. And there's this Hollywood Reporter article mentions that the lawsuit never actually materialized. So in that case, Courtney Love prevailed in court on that libel charge. And if this all sounds like complicated and messy, that's because it is. Like, this is
right.
It was really one of those. It's kind of like if you go back to our previous celebrity episode about Billy Joel, the Billy Joel story, especially.
Yeah.
That story was a much older story than this one. And yet there was so many articles about that. It was really hard to like stitch it all together in a way that kind of like, so you could follow it. And so I hope you all appreciate this, because it was not easy to kind of piece things together from like, because it's just like tabloid fodder, right? Like that's the thing about when celebrities get ripped off.
Yeah.
Like it's just tabloid fodder, right?
Right.
People eat it up. And so in any case, this was
that's
messy.
Caleb going, I work so hard for you people. You don't understand the lengths I had to go to for this Courtney Love story. We appreciate you, everyone. I do. The listeners do. Right. Go on Apple Podcasts and write Caleb a 5-star review, just because how hard he works.
Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome.
Anyway, so look, let's. I should be clear about this. Courtney Love definitely owns up to all of this. And so back in that FT essay that I quoted earlier, she wrote in a little bit later, she says, financial literacy is one of the most critical things an artist can have, but it seems scary. It's scary understanding my fault in all this and acknowledging my overspending. So that's the other thing too, is like she was making lifestyle choices, right? And so the combination of like working with shady people and maybe being vulnerable because of addiction and grief and those kinds of things. And then also, but spending money because some people really like to spend money. That's
part of financial literacy though too, is realizing you can't just spend all the money.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. She later wrote about how Britney Spears conservatorship has been kind of covered to death. So I think most people know about that story, but she said she was glad that Britney was able to finally get justice over her whole conservatorship thing. And she says, well, I hope my family's next. So it sounds like there's still things going on in their world. They're still trying to recover some of the money. And in that Marin podcast, she talks about her new manager. And so she's finally sounds like she's got somebody honest and, has somebody that like is managing her business interests well, but it took a long time and it definitely cost her a lot of money to get to that place.
The celebrity Kevin Hart, comedian, actor, businessman, ubiquitous pitchman with infinite hustle. Kevin Hart had the highest grossing comedy tour again in 2023. Did you know about that, Caleb?
I did not know about that.
Yeah,
Greg.
I'm not surprised. He's been listed among the highest paid comedians since at least 2016. And
wow.
According to my non-exhaustive research, he is currently the 4th richest comedian in the world. And the 3 ahead of him are people like he's behind like Jerry Seinfeld is one of them, where it's like, of course, everyone but he's also decades.
Everybody's behind Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah,
I think.
but he's also decades behind Jerry Seinfeld in terms of his
that's true.
career. So you go, yeah, you're probably not going to catch up with him. But also, just to put that in context, he's ahead of Adam Sandler, who's also decades ahead of him. He's ahead of David Letterman, who we all know is decades ahead of Kevin Hart, and he's ahead of Eddie Murphy. So he's Kevin Hart. You look at the top 10 list of richest comedians, he's easily the youngest guy on that list. Here's an interesting thing is that during the writer's strike that happened in 2023, I found that I had burned through all like the writer's strike lasted 5 months, and it felt like within 5 days my DVR was drained and I needed to find new things to watch. And one of the things that I stumbled upon was on Peacock. Kevin Hart had a show called Hart to Hart, which was his it was his, I mean, it's a talk show, but it wasn't really a talk show. It was absolutely a podcast that they had filmed and done some production values and had a set for, and you couldn't listen to on Pandora. You had to watch it on Peacock. Really it was absolutely a podcast. But here's what I found fascinating about that, because so many podcasts with a comedian because he interviewed people, and that was the whole thing. And so often, like I'm a big Pete Holmes fan. He has a podcast. His conversation always revolves back around to religion and spirituality and things like that. With Kevin Hart, what I noticed on Hart to Hart was that his conversations with huge celebrities, like Jay-Z was on there. He had what's the guy on Shark Tank who owned the Dallas Mavericks or still does? Cuban. Mark Cuban was on there.
Cuban.
Yeah. And with and again, I know those guys are known more for their business acumen, but even he had Sweetie on there, the rapper Sweetie. And with every single one of them, he always wrapped the conversation back around to business. Like, what are you doing to get ahead? What have you found? What have been the lessons you've learned about business? And so his podcast wasn't about, jokes or your process for being creative. It was like, let's talk about the business of being an entertainer. And I thought that was fascinating, because Kevin Hart, obviously he's known for being a stand-up, but the dude is a businessman, and he's all about the business of entertainment. He is well known as a comedian just for his hustle, because he's one of those guys where it's like, how many, I think I Googled how many projects is Kevin Hart working on right now.
Yeah.
And it was, and it was like a list of a half a dozen movies that are like that are in production right now. And that's just the movie side of stuff. So he doesn't just have, and he's obviously still touring. He had the highest grossing comedy tour of 2023, like we just said. But he also has been building and scaling just the business side. It's like the back end of stuff. He's been busting his ass and doing amazing things like that. Here, this is just a list of businesses that I found in an LA Times article from July of 2023. So this might not be the most current list, and it might not be an exhaustive list of the businesses that he owns. But first off, he owns a company called Heartbeat. That's his media enterprise, basically content creation. They have a lot of comedians that they're promoting through Heartbeat. He's got a company called Vita Hustle, which was his nutritional supplements company, which is crazy because I kind of go, oh, that kind of makes me uneasy if someone's selling nutritional supplements, because I go,
hey, if it's good enough for Alex Jones, it's good enough for Kevin Hart.
Exactly.
Greg.
That's why I don't feel good about it. And then he's got a company called Hart House, which is his plant-based fast food restaurant chain. I looked up that, and it looks like right now there's exactly 4 of them that are open, and they're all in the LA area. He also has Gran Coramino, which is his tequila brand. Between getting off of work today and right now when we're recording the podcast, it crossed my mind to go to the liquor store to see if they had Gran Coramino just to have it. And then I was like, I don't got time for that. So I didn't. And then, but
Okay.
then lastly, and most surprisingly to me, he's got another company that's called Heartbeat Ventures, which is his own venture capital firm. The dude, that to me, that blows this whole thing apart. In terms of like knowing that there is a stand-up comedian that also has a venture capital firm, that's just beyond. So
yeah, he's got a lot going on.
Right. And that's just his business. That's just his businesses. So it's again, this is from that LA Times article. It says that the dude's got 80 employees and he's got offices for his businesses in Atlanta and Hollywood and New York. Now, I think you and I are kind of on the same page with this. I do not enjoy I don't enjoy managing people, and it's difficult for me to delegate stuff. Is that?
Yeah.
I mean, I hate it.
Yeah, I think for me it depends a little bit on the context, but yeah, for the most part, it's not something I like to do.
Yeah, and
I have enough trouble. I have enough trouble, Greg, managing myself. Okay, how am I gonna help somebody else? How?
See, and mine is
my main advantage is age. That is what I've got going for me, Greg, is that I have fucked up more than most people because I'm older than most people. I mean, maybe that's not technically true, but that's how it feels.
So you've learned more. So let me interpret that. So you've learned more lessons. So you're like, I'm the guy who learned through the hard way how to do this right.
More or less, yes.
Yeah, because that's for me. I hate even like I do remodel projects around my house all the time. I really enjoy it. But I hate hiring people to do anything that I feel like I could possibly do. Like even demolition work. I love doing demolition work. And even though you think you can't mess up demo, I'm totally also going, you know what? Nobody's going to do it with the love that I put into it. So I don't want to, I want to do all that stuff my own self. But when we talk about business and you talk about managing people and delegating stuff, the only way that you're going to be able to build a business, to scale a business, is if you're able to manage people, if you're able to delegate stuff. So I know that my aversion to those things actually limits my earning potential, and I get it. It's a trade-off because I still don't want to do that stuff. But Kevin Hart, obviously, he's built and scaled businesses, and that has required him to hire lots of people. Like I said, he has at least 80 employees. But by doing that, by building and scaling your business, it also opens you up to fraud, because think about it. If you have 0 employees and you have 0 partners, you will never be the victim of embezzlement. No one, right?
True.
Because we talk all the time about separation of duties, but also there's the one exception where it's like there's no one but me. Every cent that I'm dealing with is my money anyways. So no one can. It's kind of the dragon, Smog the Dragon, his business method, where obviously you can have outsiders who come in and try to steal your gold, but nobody inside your corporation can, because you do it all yourself.
Yeah, you're the only one.
So if you're a big celebrity, just to be a celebrity, above and beyond your tequila company or your venture capital firm, you have probably got to have an entourage of people, like an agent, like a manager. And I have no idea how an agent is different from a manager. And you probably have a publicist, and likely you have a designer. And in Kevin's Hart case, he also had a personal shopper. Yeah. but which seems
crucial, maybe, in the world of Kevin Hart.
It does. Again, if you've got 6 businesses plus, like we said at the beginning,
if you got 6 businesses, you don't really have time to just like hop over to the Nordstrom,
right?
And peruse. You know,
I don't know how you have time for anything if you've got 6 businesses and you're always making Capital One commercials and comedy specials and movies. So
is it Capital One? I thought it was American Express.
Maybe it's American Express.
Whatever, it's a credit card.
Yeah, it's one of them. So
whichever credit card he's using the most, that's the one he's sponsoring.
I'm sure you're absolutely right. So yeah, like he obviously had need for a personal shopper, and in 2015, I don't think this was his first personal shopper, but in 2015, Kevin Hart began his relationship with a man named Dylan Jason Sire. Sire was hired by Kevin Hart to obtain several garments, and I gotta say, going back to that Peacock show, the Heart to Heart show, Kevin Hart, spiffy dresser. Like he's his sweater game was tip top, man. I like honestly watching that this summer. I have purposely I bought a bunch of sweaters going into winter. Going,
wow,
this is gonna be the winter of crew neck sweaters for Greg Kyte. And that was inspired by Kevin Hart. I was not able to find any sweaters that were nearly as cool as Kevin Hart's sweaters. So,
well, I have to imagine these are these are the 4-figure sweaters, perhaps.
Right. I don't think any of his personal shoppers were shopping at Kohl's the way that Greg Kyte did. I have a personal shopper, but it's me. It's me.
Oh, yeah, very good.
Yeah. So here's a quote. Going back to Dylan Jason Sire, his buyer. This was a quote from the Queens County DA's office, one of their press releases. It says, Sire first became acquainted with the actor-comedian in 2015 through his personal shopping business, Sire Consulting LLC, through which he was contracted to obtain several items for the actor. Through that connection, the defendant acquired Mr. Hart's various credit card numbers with the understanding that they would only make authorized purchases. Instead, he allegedly made over $1 million worth of unauthorized charges on those credit cards over the course of 19 months. So, very boring fraud. If you're asking me,
I mean, he just, he used a legitimate credit card to make legitimate purchases. Yeah, but he just kept the shit.
Right. Well, yeah, but
$1 million worth of shit.
Yes,
I might add.
He was the personal shopper for a super rich guy. So he got the super rich guy's credit card so that he could do his job, which is shopping. And while he was shopping for the client, he also went shopping for himself. That's the fraud.
That's right.
That's the whole damn thing. And I know I love this part of every fraud we look at. Here are some of the more expensive and the weirder things that he bought / stole.
I can't wait.
He bought 5 Patek Philippe watches. Patek. Yeah, that's what
Pretty
I said.
Sure it's Patek.
Patek Philippe watches. I Googled them just to see what they looked like, and just on the Google search that I found out, there's one watch worth $8.5 million. So
yeah, they're very nice.
Very, very nice. He didn't steal the $8.5 million one because he only stole.
He's not even doing it right.
He was he was showing
what kind of personal shopper can't get the most expensive watch?
Right, but listen, he had 5 of them, and his whole thing didn't even come up to. It came up to like 1.25 million was about the total that he stole.
Pretty good.
He bought a Sam Friedman painting, which was so funny because I was like, wait a second, wasn't Sam Friedman the guy who ran FTX? And then I was like, no, that's Sam Bankman-Fried. So it was
close,
different guy.
Close,
but yeah. But and I looked up some very nice abstract art. He bought a couple of Louis Vuitton bags, which I go, that seems like a hack purchase to me.
Fucking basic.
It's so basic. But
fucking
then
basic.
He bought 16 Bear Brick collectible dolls.
Okay, now I'm impressed because I don't even know what the fuck those are.
I didn't either. I had to look them up. I had to look, and then he also bought 5 KAWS, KAWS, 5 KAWS collectible dolls as well. Looked them both up. I kind of get it. They're sort of these artsy. They look. It's more like you're not buying a doll, you're buying art, and there is sort of this. I mean, it's still dolls. I don't know how much street cred you can have with dolls, but if you're going to have street cred with dolls, I'm going to say Bear Brick and Cause are probably the ones that are going to do it. So
really,
look them up. Look them up. I will put a link. We'll put
maybe
a link
I
in
will.
the show.
Maybe
show
I
notes.
will. Maybe I'll look.
And you
up.
can look at, and you'll agree with me. It's like, okay, it says dolls. It's not like Barbies. It's not like.
Are they like? Are they like those Russian nesting dolls or something?
No,
except they're made out of like doubloons and like
they're
fucking
okay. They're
rubies
weird.
And stuff.
They're weird. It's like if I don't know. Do you know who Modest Mouse is?
Sure.
And they have that head with the mouse head with little X
Yes.
eyes. It's like these dolls remind me of like Modest Mouse. So go just Google them. You'll get it. Just pause the fucking podcast and Google Bear Brick and Cause dolls and then get back here and it'll make better sense. But anyways, here's what this Dylan Jason Sire guy does is he buys over $1 million worth of stuff on Kevin Hart's credit cards, and he shows them all off on his Instagram page. Just brilliant. Just that's really how you do fraud is you steal the stuff and then show it off on social media. So that's arguably how the dude got caught. And when they did arrest him, they searched his home and they seized $250,000 worth of assets, which I hope was really $250,000 worth of exclusively weird dolls.
Yeah.
I want to see FBI agents with boxes of dolls hauling them to their vans.
I want to see FBI. I actually want to see FBI agents like backing slowly out of the room because they're so freaked out over these
okay.
Weird ass dolls.
This is what he did. Maybe we
Sir,
should have.
We actually can't place you under arrest.
Maybe we should have worn our bulletproof vests. Here's another quote from the Queens County DA's office. It says, regardless of whether you're a celebrity or not, anyone can fall victim to this kind of fraud, which is wrong. Not everyone can. Only people who hire personal shoppers can be victims of this kind of fraud. But regardless, she went on to say, it is paramount to keep track of your expenses, check your credit card reports, and diligently keep your financial information to yourself. And I will tell you, that bugs the hell out of me that they would say that, because if everyone kept track of their expenses, then it's not that this wouldn't happen. It's just that it would get detected more quickly if everyone did that. But like we said before, if you're scaling your business, you have to delegate things like tracking your expenses. And if Kevin Hart was tracking his expenses, that's all he would do all day, every day, is track his goddamn expenses. He wouldn't have time to do a show or to exercise or to venture his capital. He would just be a very, very busy accounts payable clerk.
So, Greg, did we learn anything?
We did. I did.
Okay.
One of the things, as much as I hate this, it's true. You can't be in business without exposing yourself to the risk of being a victim of fraud. And the reason why I hate that is I know we've touched on this in prior episodes. It's like the retail stores where they almost have an expense item in their budget that says, we know that shoplifters will steal this much of what we've got in our store. So we've just got to make sure we price appropriately to cover that like I said, it's a cost of doing business. And I think that anyone, and Kevin Hart is a great example of this. Courtney Love is even a bigger example of this, where it's like, I think with Courtney Love, she, like you kept pointing out, she was an easy target because if she's stoned all the time, it's probably pretty easy to take her stuff.
She's not paying attention.
But she also
by her own admission, she's like, I'm spending lots of money, and I trusted people to do stuff, and so I wasn't paying attention.
And that's the thing. You've got to trust people to do stuff for you when you're in business. And right there, that means that you are exposing yourself to to the risk of becoming a victim of fraud, because anytime you trust somebody to do something, they could violate your trust and they could take that. So, but also we have to realize, and this is something I got to talk myself through, is that it's the whole risk reward thing, that you got to take that risk to be in business. And and like we said before, I don't like delegating. I don't like managing people. And so because of that, I understand that I'm limiting my earning potential, because mostly I don't like doing that kind of work, but also there's not that risk that I'm taking by doing it. So I think that has to be said. But the big lesson that I think really comes from both of these these celebrities is just, and it's financial literacy, but it's also making sure that you're taking responsibility for the financial side of the business. And this really, the whole thing, the quote that you read, one of the quotes you read about Courtney Love really brought it home. Is it's like because what did the quote say? It was like, my attorney found 5 fake wills and 60 something credit cards and this many bank accounts and all this kind of stuff. And I go, it sounds like your attorney just pulled your credit report. I don't think they did, like, it wasn't a big like private
Deep
investigator gumshoe. I think they just pulled your credit report. It says, do you have 5,000 credit cards that you're actively using, Miss Love? And she's like, nope, I've got 3. And it's like, cool, let's maybe close some of these bitches down. And that's that. So whoever you are, and I don't care if this is just, if listener, get your credit report, the actual one from the credit bureaus. You get a free one every year. I get rate. Do you have any of those credit cards that give you like updates for your credit score, like if it changes? I do too. My Costco Visa card through Citibank does that. But that's not going to help you, because if you've never gotten have you ever gotten your actual credit report from the bureaus?
I have, but I admit that it's been a while.
Right.
Those services also do good. They do a good job of monitoring your activity. So if something like a new account is opened, they notify you. They're like, or it is something that shows up. And so, for what it's worth, unless you really want to see it for yourself, the activity is pretty well monitored through other means.
And see, don't kick my legs out from underneath me, Caleb Newquist.
Sorry about that.
You gotta get the actual friggin' report, because what's awesome about that is when you go through, if you go through the entire report, you will see stuff. Because like what I bought, this was 7 years ago, I bought a Sleep Number bed from the Sleep Number store, and I think they had some 0% financing or something like that. So I was like, coolest, and I paid it off, though, still in like a couple of months. But on my credit, and on the credit report, it doesn't come through as Sleep Number bed. It comes through as whatever the holding company
whatever
is.
The bank is.
Something like that. But it's a worthwhile exercise to go through them and go, I don't recognize this. What is it? Tie it back and go, oh, okay, Sleep Number bed.
Right.
Got it. That makes sense. That's taken care of. That's closed down. If you do that, and it doesn't have to be all the time, the more often you do it, the better. And this stuff. But again, with these frauds that we're talking about, Courtney Love probably would have saved millions of dollars had she or a trusted person done that for her on a regular basis. So it's easy and it takes care of it. Also, and again, I know the formula for getting a high credit score is weird, but I'm a big proponent of consolidating your credit cards. If you've just accumulated a bunch of cards and you don't need them. You don't need a lot of cards.
Right.
You maybe need 2 tops. I have exactly 1 credit card that I use, and that's it. And I would say simplify everything to where it gets down to the minimum number of things that you need. Close everything else down. It might, like I said, it might monkey with your credit score for a minute, but not for long. Do that. Take care of that. Another thing that I think of, this is more on the Kevin Hart side with his personal shopper, is that there are companies out there like Divvy, which was recently purchased by Bill, and Bill used to be Bill.com. And now Divvy's not Divvy anymore. It's,
Wait, Bill wasn't William? I'm so confused.
No, it wasn't. Bill is short for Bill.com.
Oh.
Not for William.com. And now Divvy's not Divvy. Divvy is now Bill Spend and Expense, which is a horrible name. But I'm not trying
That's
to.
the name of a business. That's the name of a business.
That's the name of Divvy now, and Divvy is it's a business spend solution. So basically, with Divvy, I'm just going to call it Divvy. I've done some work for them back when they were Divvy. They had
full
a building.
Disclosure, ladies and gentlemen.
Right,
Full disclosure.
Full disclosure too. I tried to contact them to say, hey, you should sponsor this episode, and they blackballed me. Well, they didn't blackball me. They just they probably had a full day of work and didn't have time to respond to my email. But regardless, they should have sponsored this episode.
No matter.
They could have told you everything to do, but it's not, because it's not just like, hey, we need a credit limit on this for this card, but it's also like you have, it's like real-time reporting that you can see of all of the cards that you have out there, what they're spending it on, how much they're spending. In theory, even if you've got a bunch of people spending it, there's one place you go to and you can look through there and see if anything seems huge, seems excessive, seems like a weird place for people to buy stuff. So there's ways that you can track it. So there's products like that are out there. There's also a very interesting thing about virtual credit cards that you just use one time. Are you familiar with these?
I don't believe I am.
It's amazing because it's like you have a credit card number that's good for one specific transaction, and that's it. So that then if you get that number out there and anyone tries to use it a second time, it'll be automatically declined. So there's a lot of stuff that.
That's some real like beautiful mind shit right there. Greg.
It's pretty interesting, and it makes a lot of sense because of how many times like you get in. Well, like for instance, when I had to sign up, when we did the Claudia Viles, the very, very, very nice lady who did some fraud episode,
yes.
I had to like pay 25 cents or something like this for a 4-month subscription to the Outer Reaches Maine Journal or something like this to get access to the
fabulous.
And it was one of those things where it was like 25 cents for 4 months, and then after that it's $100 a day. I don't know what it was. It was something, but I was like, I wish I had one of these virtual cards so I could pay my 25 cents and then not have to worry about going back and canceling it because the card just won't work when they try to use it again. So there's good things like that, but also it helps a lot when you're dealing with people like a vendor that you have to give a card to go and do some shopping, because then they can only do that shopping and then the card's gone. So there's stuff like that you can look into. Technology can help you with a lot of fraud stuff. And hey, companies that have stuff like that, we have slots that you can buy on Oh My Fraud to get the word out.
All right, that's it for this episode. And remember, just because you can read the words "In God We Trust" on a $20 bill, that doesn't make you financially illiterate.
And also remember, there's no way your personal shopper can steal with you if you never hire a personal shopper.
If you want to drop us a line, send us an email at ohmyfraud@earmarkcpe.com. Greg, Kyte, where are you on the internet?
You can reach me on LinkedIn. Let's do that one.
Okay.
I'm Greg Kyte, CPA on LinkedIn. I think it's just linkedin.com/Greg Kyte. And you can find me. What about you, Caleb? Where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure. LinkedIn, Caleb Newquist. First name, last name.
Oh My Fraud is written by Caleb Newquist and myself. Our producer is Zach Frank. Rate, review, and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen on Earmark, you can earn free CPE credit too. Or alternatively, if you buy a subscription to Earmark, you can get all your CPE so easy, so fast. That's what I do. I highly recommend it.
Be like Greg, everybody.
Do it. And join us next time for more avarice, swindlers, and scams from stories that will make you say, "Oh, my fraud."
My fraud.